Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I hope you're all doing spectacular and that you enjoy these truly spooky haunted nursing home stories. If you do like this video, make sure that you hit like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell also to make sure that you always get reminded when new videos are released. Without further ado, get ready to embrace the terror, and off we go. I've had a fascination with spirits since I was a young child. I grew up in what I personally believe to have been an incredibly haunted house built on haunted land. This otherworldly experience happened to my mother, but it has stuck with me for years. My mother is a nurse. She works at a nursing home caring for elderly patients, some of whom are immobile, senile, or close to death. She works the night shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. One day while I was visiting her at home, we got to talking about our paranormal experiences, something we do quite often when I do visit her. She told me that one night, while she was making her rounds, she found herself walking down a corridor that had no patients. I believe she said it was a nurse station / break room area, something of that nature. "Ma'am?" She heard a woman's voice behind her as she was walking. She thought it was a patient who needed something and had followed her to ask her for help. She turned around, and no one was there. She said it unnerved her a little, but she didn't think too much of it and continued making her way down the corridor. She told me she took several more steps when she heard the voice again, and that it was closer than before. "Can you hear me?" From what I was told, the inflection in the voice wasn't one of agitation or impatience, but rather of surprise. My mother turned around again, and still there was nothing. Of course, at that point, she was truly unsettled, and quote-unquote hightailed it out of there as quickly as she could. This story gives me chills. Whatever it was, acknowledged my mother's curiosity and directly tried to communicate for confirmation that she could, in fact, hear it speak. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, we can all agree that sometimes there are things that simply cannot be explained. From the ages of 20 to 25, I'm 27 now, I worked in a very old nursing home that was once a slaughterhouse in the 1800s. The place is in the middle of nowhere. I worked a night shift with my best friend and flatmate. One night we were short-staffed, so there was only the two of us and one nurse. It was a 38-bed home that was, at the time, at full capacity. There's an old side and a new side to the building, that is, the original part built in the 1800s and a newer part that had been built in 2008. The nurse was doing a sleep-in shift and was getting some rest on the new side of the building. At around 2:45 a.m. we started doing our rounds and checking on the residents. My friend and I were both terrified of the old side of the building and never left each other's sight while we were there. That area just had a dark energy, a heaviness that brought with it a physical pressure like someone sitting on your back. We started on the ground floor and made our way from the bottom of the corridor to the top before going up the back set of stairs. We made our way up and started moving from room to room, doing our thing. We finished, went back down and into the kitchen. Not too long after, we went to check on a resident and fill out paperwork. I was standing beside the bed with my friend sitting in the chair. The time check informed us that it was 3:33 a.m. We looked at each other and made a silly ghost noise. It was mocking, I know, and believe me, after what happened next, I will never do anything like that again. I felt a cold breath against my ear, and then heard a deep growl. I froze. My friend turned pale. The room went abnormally dark around us. We did our best to calmly, but very slowly, make our exit. We went back downstairs and through the kitchen out into the smoking area, trying to process what had just happened. Neither of us knew what to say. We had heard noises before, listened to stories of experiences from other employees, but had always just laughed them off. I haven't told this story to very many people. I know it sounds insane. For a while after it happened, I didn't sleep at all. I kept waking up, having strange dreams, feeling that dark energy around me. My boyfriend woke me up one night, shaking me and shouting that there was a tall woman in a hood standing over me. He is a complete skeptic, doesn't remotely believe in anything paranormal. He was nearly crying with fear. In one dream I had, I believe that it was an astral projection. I could see myself asleep, but I could also see myself sitting on the floor at the bottom of my bed. My head was in my hands, and I was sobbing. Then I was suddenly back in my bed, my body being dragged out of the bed by this other version of myself. I reached for my phone under my pillow, trying to call my friend. Then I woke up. When I opened my eyes, I found my phone in my hand, open to her contact information. My friend and I have always been interested in the realm of the supernatural. We would always watch TV shows, always try to debunk the evidence that they would present. We would also, from time to time, try to make contact. Since the incident at the nursing home, my friend has done Ouija board sessions. I'm not sure at all if I want to mess with that. I would like to know who or what I felt breathing against my ear. But that experience is also the reason that I still, to this day, walk a little bit faster down corridors. Since leaving the nursing home, I've become very spiritual. Not in a Christian type of way, as in putting salt at my door, burning sage, various things for protection. Anything to keep that sort of negativity out of my life. I'm a certified nursing assistant, and I used to work at this awful nursing home. I always worked the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift. This one night during the wintertime, there was a storm. It wasn't too bad, but no one was showing up for the next shift, the 11 through 7 a.m. shift. People from my shift were mandated to stay, and I was one of them. It came to the end of my regular shift. I did my normal rounds and was about to start with cleaning duties. My supervisor approached me and told me that I was switching places with another CNA. It was whatever, though the area I was being transferred to for the night only had one other person working. I had to do rounds again, make sure everything was all good. At one point I paused and set my clipboard down. As I picked it back up, I noticed a woman at the end of the hall. I decided to start down there where she was so that I could check on her first. I asked her if anything was wrong and introduced myself. Her only response was to tell me that she couldn't sleep. I asked if I could do anything to help, but she never replied. I went on my way and started the rounds. As I was leaving the first room, I realized that the woman wasn't there anymore. I decided to speed up on checking people, trying to figure out where she had wandered off to. About halfway down the hall, I was heading out of another room, and to my surprise, there she was, right in front of me. I jumped back slightly, yelling at being startled. I began asking her where she wanted to go. I thought maybe after she had a little walk, she'd be tired enough to lay back down. She only gave short answers, yes, no, sure. I asked her where her room was. She said 134. It wasn't on my wing. She was quite a ways away from it. So I took her there. The room was weirdly cold and empty. I asked her if she was cold, tucked her in, and that was that. Later on, the phone rang. It was room 134, asking for me. Not long after that, myself and another CNA were called in for a shift meeting, and while we were there, I mentioned the lady and her little trip around the unit. I asked why she was in her room alone, why it was so cold. He informed me that there was no one in room 134. The woman who had occupied it had passed away 2 nights ago. I remember laughing nervously, saying, "No way," in disbelief. I told him about how I had a conversation with her, how I had tucked her into bed. I told him to stop joking around. After the meeting, he showed me documentation of her passing, and then took me to her empty room. I couldn't fathom what I had experienced. I still can't. Not really. It will always be a shock. I started my job as a care assistant in 2019. The nursing home was formerly an orphanage. It has 4 floors, and on each floor the staff and residents would often see one of 2 women. There's a lady in white and a woman in black. During one particular shift, I started off the day with my normal routine. I fixed myself a cup of coffee and made my way to the first room. As I was walking in, I saw a woman wearing a long, black, old-fashioned dress slowly leaving the room next door. My heart sank. I rubbed my eyes, and she was gone. I carried on, went into the room, and the lady that I was seeing to at the time told me, "That woman has been in here again." I asked her what woman she was talking about, knowing full well what I had just seen. She went on to tell me that when she comes, it means one of us has to go. I was confused and terrified. I asked her as many questions as I could about the mysterious woman, but the lady didn't speak again for the rest of my time with her. That experience was on my mind for the rest of my 12-hour shift. My mom shared her story of this experience with me when I was younger. I always found it intriguing. She told me that this encounter is what made her believe in spirits. In 2006, she worked at a nursing home that specialized in geriatric care rather than just assisted living. It was lunchtime, and she and another nurse were helping some of the residents make their way to the cafeteria. These residents were incapable of feeding themselves, so the nurses would take them and make sure that everyone got to eat at the same time. My mom brought the first resident, a blind man who was wheelchair-bound, and parked his chair at one of the tables. She noticed that 4 chairs were around the table as if a group had been sitting there. Thinking nothing of it, she moved the chairs out of the way and moved on to help with the next resident. When wheeling another resident into the room, she saw the chairs back out and in the same positions that they had been in the first time she found them. She thought it was weird, then put them back again and wheeled the resident she had been assisting to their spot at a different table. There were 3 residents in total who were wheelchair-bound in the cafeteria at that point. My mom went to go and get another resident to bring them in, and when she got back, lo and behold, the chairs were out again. As she stood there, perplexed, another nurse walked up beside her and saw where she was looking. It turned out the other nurse had been having the exact same experience, coming in, finding the chairs out, stacking them up to get them out of the way, then finding them back out once more on her return. Somehow, in a room full of disabled people who couldn't see or even lift a spoon, 4 chairs were being repeatedly pulled off of a stack and placed into the same positions, over and over. My mom later found out that there was a resident ghost at the home dubbed Hank, who the other staff were all really calm and chill about. They told her he never seemed harmful, but that the cafeteria was his place. Interestingly enough, the cafeteria room was a repurposed morgue, if I'm not mistaken. The conjoining room, then used for storage, still had the autopsy table.